If imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, then there is no one more flattered than Elvis Presley. A man so iconic that thousands of people have made a career off of pretending to be him. This goes beyond simple parody. Elvis impersonator is an actual job that people have and which they use to send their kids through college. More specifically, those who imitate Elvis on a professional level are called Elvis tribute artists, or ETAs for short, and these guys are real professionals. These ETAs are members of the SAG-AFTRA and pay licensing fees to the EPE and the APG. And I know that all sounds like alphabet soup flowing down a shower drain, but I wanted to bring it up because it shows that this stuff has gotten way out of hand. Elvis is no longer just a man or even just a celebrity. He's a catalyst of an entire Elvis industry that rakes in tens of millions of dollars a year. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to show you the inner workings of the modern Elvis industry and the many eccentric people that have kept it running over the years. But before we can do that, we need to tackle the world of Elvis bureaucracy. In Hollywood, they say that you die twice. Once, when you take your last breath, and then a second time, once your likeness is no longer profitable. First of all, I am not a lawyer and this is not legal advice, but to my best understanding, it works a little something like this. As a person, you have a right to decide how your identity is used commercially. In the US, these rights fall under what's called personality rights, and it means that no person or company can, without your permission, exploit your identity for their own commercial gain, be it your name, your voice, your likeness, or any other aspect of your identity that unequivocally belongs to you. Now, if you're an average Joe Schmo, that's probably never gonna be an issue for you. But for a massive entertainment icon like Elvis, where people are just dying to put your face on lunchboxes and calendars and shit, it becomes an important piece of protection. When Elvis died in 1977, it sparked a decade-long court squabble over who owned the likeness rights of Elvis Presley. Was Elvis's image public domain, or did the rights go back to his family? Well, in 1987, the courts concluded that Elvis's image was still a protected intellectual property, with the ownership of said property going to Elvis's estate. Elvis's image is its own brand that can be bought and sold and, maybe most importantly, licensed. In fact, it's estimated that Elvis's likeness rights bring in about $35 million a year. Quite a lucrative endeavor indeed. So lucrative, in fact, that several corporations over the years have been interested in scooping up the rights to the Elvis Presley name. So just for fun, here's a brief timeline of corporations who have owned Elvis Presley over the years. The personality rights of Elvis Presley were owned by Elvis Presley from the birth of Elvis Presley in 1935 to the death of Elvis Presley in 1977. Then the rights were transferred to no one? Then, after a decade of legal limbo, it was decided that Elvis's personality rights belonged to Elvis's estate. More specifically, the rights were granted to Elvis Presley Enterprises, which was a corporate entity created by Elvis's estate after his death to manage his assets. Then in 2005, the rights were sold to CKX, now Sony Pictures Television Nonfiction, which is to say they bought an 85% interest in Elvis's assets. I don't know what 15% they didn't want, presumably the Aloha era. Then in 2013, that 85% stake was sold again, this time to Authentic Brands Group, who still manage Elvis's likeness to this day. Authentic Brands Group actually manages the likenesses of several deceased celebrities, including Muhammad Ali and Marilyn Monroe. And it's their hard work that ensures that these iconic celebrities can still promote products even half a century after their death. Now, since these guys own Elvis, they essentially have complete monopoly in how Elvis's likeness is used in media. It also means that if you're a commercial actor profiting off of Elvis's likeness without a license, you could very easily find yourself in legal trouble.
Here's what happened. Authentic Brands Group, who owns Elvis's brand, was wanting to put a stop to this iconic Vegas wedding act.
This was the case when Authentic Brands Group decided to go after the Las Vegas Elvis Wedding Chapel for using Elvis's name and likeness in their wedding ceremonies without their permission. They also went after the Elvis Wedding Chapel in Las Vegas, Elvis Chapel in Las Vegas, Elvis Weddings in Vegas, Graceland Wedding Chapel in Las Vegas, the Viva Las Vegas Wedding Chapel, and that's just the Elvis-themed ones. There are so many wedding services who offer an ordained Elvis impersonator to wed you and your loved one in holy matrimony. But only the Elvis Wedding Chapel offers the little Elvis wedding package for the low price of $395.
It's hard to imagine getting married in Las Vegas without Elvis by your side, making your wedding even more special.
The point I'm trying to make here is that this licensing issue also applies to performers as well. All Elvis tribute artists are, at least on paper, required to be licensed by whoever owns the rights to Elvis.
I know the Elvis estate, the guys that kind of run. Now, what do they make of your act, of your lifestyle, of what you're doing with the kind of King's legacy?
Well, they're not all that fond of it. They don't like anybody messing with the King's image and making money on his image or anything.
Elvis impersonators have been around for almost as long as Elvis himself, with the very first Elvis impersonator generally regarded to be Carl "Cheesy" Nelson, who started aping the King as early as 1954. But the true peak of Elvis impersonating came in the early 90s, where Elvis impersonation exploded in popularity, before slowly dissipating over the following decades. But while the golden age has long since passed, that doesn't mean we can't still dig through the ashes. This is I Am Elvis, a guide to Elvis impersonators, released in 1991. This book is essentially an index of Elvis impersonators, with pictures and descriptions for each of them, describing their clothes, their moves, their favorite Elvis songs, their hopes, their dreams, their zodiac signs, the distribution of which looks like this, and of course, their company address, which in many cases is also their home address, because not only will this book tell you about Elvis, the Mexican Elvis, it will also guide you directly to his house. This book showcases a very broad spectrum of Elvis impersonators. You have those who work full-time as proper ETAs, and then you have more amateur productions like Miguel Quintana, who is 3 years old. Being that reliable Elvis impersonator gigs are not easy to come by, most of these treat Elvis impersonation as a hobby. Like Bobby Bradshaw, who would like to devote more time to his Elvis act in the future, but he does not want to be distracted from his full-time job as a forklift driver for Culligan. But what these wannabes all have in common is their unyielding dedication to the King. Many of them were exposed to Elvis at a young age and have a deep, almost religious devotion to the man. Listen to how they describe their feelings for the King. Elvis was what everyone wanted in a person: kind, generous, loving, talented, and sensitive. If he had lived, Elvis would have brought peace to the world. Next to my wife and my pharmacy career, Elvis is the most important thing in my life. You could replace Elvis with Jesus for any of these quotes and they'd sound perfectly fine. This is probably what people find the most jarring about Elvis impersonators. They aren't really paying tribute to Elvis the person, but more so Elvis the concept. Instead of looking at Elvis as a person with his own strengths and weaknesses, Elvis becomes this mythical, perfect figure. A role model that you should strive to be and emulate as closely as possible. Or in the words of Sammy Stone Atchison, Elvis was the most charismatic person on earth, except for Jesus. Now, when it comes to stage performances, most of these guys are very faithful to the King, and they tend to do a good job at recreating the feel of an Elvis concert. But if you're anything like me, you tend to gravitate towards the more quirkier acts, like Elvis Schmelvis.
Hey folks, I'm Elvis Schmelvis.
Schmelvis regularly tours Cyprus, so if you're on a holiday out there and you see him, come and say hello. So, here's a rundown of a few eccentric Elvis impersonators that piqued my interest.
So, Elvis told you to do reggae versions of Led Zeppelin songs in 1977, correct?
That's what he told me to do, and I wasn't sure exactly what he meant at the time, and then of course he died, God rest his soul, but I think we've kind of figured it out now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Led Zeppelin!
Led Zeppelin is a rock band from California, known for doing reggae renditions of classic hard rock tunes, though mostly Led Zeppelin tunes, obviously. The band is fronted by Elvis impersonator Torch Elvis, which is a portmanteau of Elvis and his real name, Greg Tortel. And Torch Elvis does a really good job at approximating how Elvis would have sounded if he sang hard rock, which is to say he sounds exactly like Glenn Danzig. Obviously, this is all immensely silly stuff, and they are perfectly aware of how silly it is.
And the music is good?
Do we look silly or something?
No.
However, one thing that separates this band from your average joke band is that these guys have been going strong since 1989, and they have a bit of a cult following in the California area. Because behind the facetious veneer, these guys are actually good musicians, and their music and live shows are genuinely entertaining. But don't take it from me, have a listen to Robert Plant himself.
My favorite right now is Led Zeppelin. I've got it in the car. That's really good.
Listen, may I thank you for all the months of pleasure that you've given me. I think you've done a great job and you give me great entertainment.
Well, thank you very much. Coming from you, that means quite a bit.
Overall, wacky concept, but even once the novelty wears off, they're just a genuinely fun band worth checking out.
Men jag har ju blivit knäckt alltså människor efter den 20 år av Elvis att man blir ju aldrig lik som man var.
Eilert Pilarm is Sweden's most popular Elvis impersonator, which might be a bit surprising considering how he doesn't really look or sound remotely like the king. In fact, Eilert Pilarm tends to fall in the so bad it's good category of musicians. He's notorious for singing very off-key, wildly off-time, and his limited grasp of the English language means that his diction is entirely incomprehensible.
Now, you speak very little English.
Yes.
Is this a problem for an Elvis impersonator?
No, no problem. We understand well together, but it's a little English.
Yet none of that stopped him from becoming Sweden's most booked artist in 2001. This man has toured Europe, for God's sake.
Men vad beror det på att du är så framgångsrik i England?
Jag kör min egen stil, alltså jag sjunger Elvis-låtar, men jag härmar ingenting.
The Eilert Pilarm experience is such a perfect storm of disaster that some have speculated that Eilert might be an Andy Kaufman-style performative genius.
I hate myself for saying this, but do you think he knows? Do you know what I mean? I wonder if it's one of those things where it's actually some terrifically ironic Swedish person who speaks flawless English and can sing perfectly.
But no, he's entirely genuine. It all started when Eilert Dahlberg was enrolled in the military, when suddenly he started suffering from a massive headache. His body was being taken over by the spirit of Elvis Presley. And once the king latched on to Eilert, he refused to leave. In the years that followed, Eilert would be subjected to various medical treatments, including electroshock therapy, all to get Elvis out of his system. But nothing worked. That was until he started performing his own Elvis shows and distributing his homemade Elvis tapes. And it wouldn't take long until he would find himself at a brush with fame. In 1992, he was invited to play on Morgonpasset, one of the biggest radio programs in Sweden. That really propelled his stardom, and a few years later he was able to leave his job at the local paper factory and go out on tour. It was at this point that he changed his name to Eilert Pilarm. Allegedly, the name change was to give him the same initials as Elvis Presley. I say allegedly because it's not true. He originally wanted to change his name to Eilert Pilgrim, but he was denied. But nevertheless, he was truly dedicated to the king, and he would see great success both in Sweden and in the UK.
I think he sounds exactly like Elvis after 12 martinis.
Now, if you're the empathic sort, you might feel a bit conflicted at this. Most of the media coverage of Eilert is quite mocking in tone, but despite receiving some hefty criticisms over his decades of Elvis impersonating, Eilert is completely unfazed. When asked about the rather scathing reception by Jimmy Fallon, Eilert had this to say: "It doesn't bother me. I guess they thought it was funny. You gotta be allowed to laugh sometimes."
How do you account for your amazing popularity? Because I know you're massive in Sweden.
I am myself.
Because you are yourself.
Yeah. I am.
What a boss. He retired from the paper factory a few years ago, and now he's just out there, living his best life, taking guitar lessons and going on walks. Maybe doing the occasional gig here and there.
What makes this Elvis extreme? Well, for starters, he's fat, homeless, and naked.
You closely resemble Elvis in the 18 months leading up to the accidental death.
Right, well, kind of the idea is I resemble Elvis if he'd kept going.
Yeah, okay.
Extreme Elvis often performs naked, occasionally takes a duty on stage, and even lets audience members rub his fat belly while he's backed by a 9-piece band. Extreme Elvis also likes to pour birdseed in his orifices and let his pet chickens gobble it up.
Now this is a sight to see.
It sounds gross, but he insists it's nothing the king wouldn't have done.
Extreme Elvis is, by a long shot, the scummiest Elvis impersonator to have ever lived. He's often made out to be the G.G. Allen of Elvis impersonators, and they're not wrong in making that comparison.
And that
G.G. is definitely an inspiration to me.
You're familiar with G.G.?
Oh, absolutely.
With the motto, "Every generation gets the Elvis it deserves," Extreme Elvis manages to create an unforgettable show that sets out to truly recreate the spirit of the times, no matter how many bodily fluids that may take.
There's going to be a profile in the new Spin magazine.
It's out right now.
It's on the newsstands right now.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Full of lies about me, but that's okay.
Really?
Yeah.
What, just for our benefit, we don't have it in front of us. What does it say?
Eat my own.
Man, you can't say that. Yeah, you can't.
Maybe once I did that, but not every show.
Look, I'd love to go into further detail on how Extreme Elvis structures his live shows, but since this is YouTube, I have to tone it down a bit. But just like G.G. Allen, he's known for and even on stage. Musically, Extreme Elvis had a ragtag group of musicians with him serving as a backing band, and they would frequently just bomb random venues unannounced and launch into an impromptu Extreme Elvis performance.
Is your heart filled with pain? Shall I come back again?
Though as Extreme Elvis evolved, his musical expression became more sophisticated. By 2004, he was touring with a complete marching band and backup dancers and doing, get this, big band renditions of Black Sabbath songs. This has no right being this cool. But while Double E does share a lot of similarities to G.G. Allen, there is one important distinction between the two.
So tonight, we're not going to operate in a traditional rock and roll idiom. Sorry. We're going to do a little performance art. This piece is called Love Me Chicken Tenders. This piece is really inspired by a book I read recently called Fast Food Nation by Eric Schlosser.
Notice how he uses words like idiom and reads books like a nerd. That's because behind the extreme persona is a much more sensible man named Matt Cornell. Matt has been a dedicated performance artist for some time, and after he pseudo-retired the Extreme Elvis persona in 2004, he would go on to do further work as a performance artist. While Matt is still kicking, it's been a while since Extreme Elvis has seen the light of day. In 2004, the website extremeelvis.com was shut down, now showing a fake FBI splash screen. At some point, some of Extreme Elvis' stuff was put up on Bandcamp, including an exclusive $69 flash drive with never-before-seen material like Elvis poo-poo funny pic.jpg, Elvis cease and desist arby's.doc, and Elvis naked with Joe Rogan.gif.
Ta gott emot kvällsnummer Sen Elvis.
Well, it's one for the money, two for the show, three to get in that gold cat.
Kjell Elvis is currently the only professional Elvis impersonator in Scandinavia, and he is, by all accounts, very good at his job. Nationally, he's known for undergoing plastic surgery to look more like the King, and setting the world record for longest continuous Elvis concert at 50 hours, 50 minutes, and 50 seconds in 2020. He is also known for the quote, "If Elvis were alive today, he'd vote Libertarian," which might sound like a Justin Bieber and Frank type situation, but actually that couldn't be further from the truth. Observe. Alright, results have been tallied for the Arkansas State Senate District 26 General Election 2016. Coming in first, representing the Democratic Party, Eddie Cheatham, with 79% of the votes. Coming in second, representing the Libertarian Party, Elvis Presley, with 21% of the votes. Joey Elvis Dane Presley is an Elvis impersonator slash politician slash used car salesman from Arkansas. While these days he runs as an independent write-in candidate, he has run for office multiple times flying the Libertarian banner. Though he's more libertarian by happenstance, as neither the Democratic nor the Republican Party wanted to support his run for office, perhaps suspecting that politician Elvis Presley might be doing a bit of trolling.
Went to the Democratic Party and tried to get him to them. Went to the Republican Party and tried to get him to them. No one accepted me because they thought it was a game I was playing, you know?
As a political pundit, Elvis has three main points of interest: industry, ecological policy and local agriculture, and the automobile industry.
We start using steel and aluminum from other countries, then we don't have the product we had in America. As a matter of fact, I'm in the bodywork business. I can see that.
Get a load of that steel tariff policy, man. I mean, what can I say? They don't call him the King for nothing. Sadly, Elvis Presley has not seen much success as a politician. But you know who has? Bruce Borders, Elvis impersonator and former mayor of Jasonville, Indiana. The man had some minor notoriety. You know, had a few television appearances in the 80s and 90s. Hell, he even went on Letterman in 1988.
Hey Dave, this is Bruce Borders. Thanks a lot for the great time I had on your show back in February of 1988. I enjoyed giving you the gift certificate to the Shack and Mac IGA food liner. Hope one day you'll come in and redeem that gift certificate.
Besides being a mayor, Bruce has been a fixture of the Indiana House of Representatives for almost 20 years, representing the Republican Party and doing, you know, Republican things. Now that's all well and good, but what if you're in the mood for something more underground? Meet the National Association of Amateur Elvis Impersonators. This was a congregation of people who are passionate about the King, but also don't take themselves that seriously. And no one is more emblematic of that sentiment than their president, Nude Elvis. Not to be confused with Extreme Elvis, though they do kinda have the same shtick. Nude Elvis is friend to the street performer and shares their struggle to make a living. Although he doesn't ask for donations when performing, it is always nice to make some money to pay for costume expenses. Your Nude Elvis! Sponsored by mailorderhusbands.net. Not only was Mail Order Husbands able to provide me with a variety of bachelors to choose from, but I was able to beat my wedding deadline by 2 weeks when I ordered Mark. Thank you, Mail Order Husbands. Yeah, I've completely lost the plot. Let's get back to the music, huh? Here's Elvis sung in Latin. Or how about Elvis in Sumerian? Elvis Gun.
Well, I swear to God, you better not put me in a self-defense situation, baby.
Want to repent for your sins? How about joining the confessional at the First Presbyterian Church of Elvis the Divine? Was Elvis a messenger of God? It's possible. Now, don't get any ideas now. I'm gonna start introducing some radical theories, some of which might be a bit fringe, a bit cuckoo. So I'll start off by clarifying some things, alright? None of what I'm about to say is true. The fact is, Elvis Aaron Presley is most certainly dead and has been for 45 years. But what if he wasn't? What if, for example, he appeared as an extra in Home Alone in 1990? What if he appeared in Legoland in 1999? What if he appeared at his own 82nd birthday? Here's Elvis's gravestone. Notice how Aaron is spelled with 2 A's, but on his birth certificate, it's spelled with only 1 A. You know what that means? That's right, he's still alive. No, for real.
Why was Elvis Presley's middle name misspelled on his own grave?
But what if Elvis never died because he was never born, per se? What if he was planted here by an extraterrestrial force? Elvis was reportedly a lifelong believer in UFOs, with some saying that he was in contact with alien life forms throughout his entire life. Then you have the Roswell incident in 1947, one of the most famous UFO sightings in history. The photographer hired by the CIA to take pictures of the wreckage was also the first photographer to take a picture of Elvis. Or so they say. Is it all a coincidence? I mean, maybe. But in the words of author Richard Daniel, the likelihood that Elvis Presley was of cosmic seed, abducted, manipulated, and controlled by strange beings none of this world, is profoundly possible. That's from the synopsis of his book, The Elvis UFO Connection, a non-fiction account of alien intervention, which leads me to believe that there is a grain of truth to it, because he very clearly puts non-fiction in the title of the book. If there's one thing that stands out to me after all of this, it's the passage of time. We're at a point now where almost all active Elvis impersonators are older than Elvis ever was. But while Elvis was a mortal man, trademarks can live forever. And as long as it is commercially viable, Elvis will outlive us all. Elvis will no doubt still exist as part of popular culture for long after everyone in this video is dead and buried. But it will be as a brand, managed and directed alongside other brands like Nike and Starbucks. But I think what I admire most about Elvis impersonators is that they are personally committed. They are determined to keep the memory of the king alive, not because of personal profit, but out of passion for the man and his music. And passion really is the key word here. Even if these Elvis aficionados might be a bit cheesy or, in some cases, insane, I would much rather Elvis's legacy be preserved by people who sincerely give a shit than by people coldly plastering his mug on lunchboxes to make a quick buck. But hey, that's show business for you. Yeah, that's all I got. See ya.